ain't gonna give in now. I think I'm gonna live this now. I'm gonna be when I'ma kill this stuff real quick. I'ma go take it to town, cause I gotta be that king in the ring when I'm knocking them out when I'm back with the will. Cause I am just up on the journey, you just know that I'm just going insane.
Warriors, rise. All right, Warriors, the moment you've all been waiting for. But let's preface this for just a moment. My messages have been blowing up at the Warrior Academy. Coach JV, XRP to 35,000. We've saw both sides of the coin. And I said, you know what? Let's just bring the gentleman right to the front. So what happened was, I want to take you guys on a quick journey. I remember around February last year, it was going absolutely viral. This beautiful man sitting in front of me right now. There was a viral video on TikTok about XRP to 35,000, but there's been so much going on. And I got to watch the Link 2 interview, and I watched the whole 2 hours, and I watched it again, and I watched it again. And I wanted to talk to you personally because it's been a very, very interesting couple years for the XRP community. We have people like you, we have people like John Deaton, amazing people out there fighting the good fight for XRP holders. And I'll never forget the moment when I was sitting. So I've been running the Warrior Academy for multiple years now, and I've been a big fan of XRP for a long time due to my banking experience. And I'll never forget the moment. It was around December 20th, 2020. Actually, it was quarantine because I have a Warrior Academy in a physical building here, so I had to quarantine myself. Somebody got the C word in my family. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, my text messages start blowing up, Jimmy. And I was like, what the heck is going on? JV, why did you get me into XRP? And I'm like, I didn't get anybody into anything. I was just expressing, did you know that Jay Clayton threw out an SEC lawsuit? And they kept saying to me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I said, I'm holding on like a tick on a dog. I said, this is either going to be the greatest time in human history or one of the biggest disasters for my YouTube channel, but I will continue to stay on the ship. The captain goes down with the ship. I said, this isn't going anywhere. And I started saying things like, this is to bring in a new Howey test. And I've been standing on that for a very, very long time, based on my banking experience, my understanding how the banking system works, how the monetary system is changing from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0, how people are changing and the way we communicate with each other. And then your video surfaced around February 2021, I believe it was it James Rule? Is that who you were interviewing with? And then okay, yeah, that one just went completely viral. And I'm like, okay. And then it just resurfaced again recently. And I'm telling you, the number one message I've been getting is XRP, is that possible? And so you have all the people looking at market cap and, you know, how does the system work? And I just was like, let's get him on here. Let's talk. So first of all, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to our community here. And number one, I want to say thank you for taking the time. You're a very, very busy man, taking the time out of the day just to speak with us. So share with the community who Jimmy is.
Sure. Coach, really appreciate you having me. And you've got the two best initials, you know, a man could possibly have. So, you know, there you go. So yeah, my name is Jimmy Vallee. My day job, I'm blessed to run our family investment firm here in Houston called Value Capital, where we've been traditional private equity investors for years and years and years, and been in everything from oil and gas to real estate to we've had fitness, we've had consumer products. I mean, I've literally dabbled in about every industry that you can be in. My prior day job was I was a partner in 3 major law firms doing corporate securities work, mostly in M&A. And when you do M&A in Texas, especially in Houston, Texas, that means you work for a lot of energy companies. So mostly what I did was midstream oil and gas, upstream oil and gas, massive, you know, not only corporate level transactions, but joint ventures, partnerships, created private equity funds, rep investment banks and fairness opinions across the whole gamut of doing corporate transactions. And that was kind of really what I think oriented me, like your banking experience, into seeing what happened with this digital asset, you know, movement. So, you know, we were, I want to say when the leading up to the pandemic, we had already started to dabble in what was going to be a YouTube roll-up type play. So we identified that these channels were kind of like little businesses. They were little storefronts, each one of them cash flowing. You know, it had merchandise off of it, whatever. We engaged an investment bank out of Portugal, actually called Trust You, who was Search the World. They were the only they were boutique investment banking type group that would do valuations of YouTube channels. They had actually come up with a whole methodology to do it. It's quite profound. In fact, we should visit about that offline sometime.
Yeah.
But we were looking to do that type of an investment activity, roll them up into one umbrella, and have a bunch of really good cash flowing assets under our master brand, whatever that was going to be.
Yeah.
And it was in the context of doing that when the pandemic hit, that, you know, I really, for the first time, saw the digital asset movement for what it was. I'd say up until then, you know, I had clients in it. I had friends that were getting into Bitcoin and stuff. And I would be like, what are you doing? You're going to lose all your money. I was that, right? And that was the first time I really appreciated that, you know, actually what's happening is much like when the internet happened in the 90s. And I'd always told myself that, look, if I see something like that profound hit, you know, industry again, I'm going all in. I'll learn it on the way. I'll figure it out, but I'm gonna dive in with both feet and get involved in it. And that's effectively how I got here.
Yeah. So okay, this is beautiful. So share with me, how did you get introduced to actual XRP? So I'm the same way. Like I looked at it and I said, wow, how is this not more discussed worldwide? Number one. Number two, and then it's just like when I used to be a competitive bodybuilder a long time ago, and when I was a bodybuilder, that was my whole world, right? Nothing else existed. And then when I stepped outside of bodybuilding, I'm like, oh, this is kind of a weird sport. It's a very small community. But when I got into XRP, kind of the same way, I got siloed into XRP, into the community. It's a massive, amazing, well, massive compared to the global scale, probably not, but amazing, loving, amazing human beings, right? So I got siloed into it, and I'm like, man, how do more people not know about this asset? Then the case comes, right? And all of a sudden, you know, I'm starting to watch Jay Clayton 2 days later. So everybody's texting me, right? I'm like, I'm holding on like a tick on a dog. That saying went viral, right? And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I believe in this asset. I don't care what the SEC is doing. And then all of a sudden, Jay Clayton bounces to go consult for a cryptocurrency fund that, like, I think a week later had increased their position in Bitcoin and Ethereum, like hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So he bounced.
One Rivers, who you're talking about, and they had made an investment in Bitcoin and Ethereum 2 months prior to the lawsuit that was $1 billion. So wow. It all looks horrible in hindsight, you know, and we can talk about that later. But yeah, continue with your story, because it's you know.
Yeah, so he heads off, and I'm like, there's something wrong with this. Like, there's something going on. And from my knowledge and what I studied about, you know, a Ripple and the things I could find on the internet, is that they were communicating with the SEC, making sure they were doing things correctly, making sure they're a legit company. I mean, they have
all of the regulators. They were communicating with all the regulators. They had an agreement existing with FinCEN and the Department of Justice that went back to 2015, calling XRP a virtual currency. It was super head scratching when the lawsuit got. Super head scratching.
So when everybody was running for the hills, like, I'm out of here, I'm dumping this asset, I'm like, this is the greatest opportunity in human history. That's what I'm like sitting back. I'm literally quarantined in a hotel, pacing back and forth, going, no, my tribe. I'm like, I'm telling you guys what I'm doing. I'm holding and I'm buying more. I'm like, this could be the biggest opportunity in human history. So how did you get introduced specifically to XRP? Was it diving into the YouTube channels, or how did you get introduced to it?
But potentially, I think it was broader than that. So initially, when the pandemic hit, all I can describe is it felt like someone had reached down and just yanked a freaking mask, you know, like a veil or something that was on me, and just ripped it right off of me. I think looking back on it, I had been kind of awakening within the corporate finance securities world a little bit, but I wasn't anywhere like what I think we all are now. So clearly about things. So that was super strange, and I went in. I basically kicked into due diligence mode like I was a young lawyer, and just started, you know, voraciously consuming as much information about what was going on as I possibly could. And started learning about digital assets and Bitcoin and its whole purpose, and was very aware of the amount of global debt that was in the world. Was already seeing, you know, the accelerator hit pretty hard to pump more money into the system to keep us afloat and surviving during the pandemic, because they were, started to shut everything down. So that's, initially Bitcoin. I get into Bitcoin. I read the white paper. I want to say the head of Twitter was pretty bullish on Bitcoin at that time. So I was really just, I was reading all the investment banking reports on digital assets. Fidelity, right around this time, this is the very early spring of 2020, they came out with a digital asset fund. So I started to try to say, how can I move my retirement and get some allocation into like my 401k, this corporate stuff that I had? How can I get some exposure into that? And just start learning about iTrust and all these different, linked to all these different, very cutting edge businesses at the time. And it was an amazing thing for me, because when I would call in to, either roll over my 401k or, get some information about how to invest in some of these securities and stuff, I'd be on the phone with like the CEO or the COO of the business. Yeah. And, and so, I mean, naturally representing executive management, so that's what I've been doing for 20 years. I would be, well, let me tell you how you should think about this. Have you looked at Texas? All this kind of like very natural stuff. I just found myself kind of falling into it. It almost like it consumed me. And it was probably, I think, in the very early summer of 2020, late spring, early summer, that I realized Bitcoin was not the one, because of the time it was taking. By this time I had, moved Bitcoin around. I'd certainly purchased and sold it on exchanges and things like that. And it would take, it was taking like 5 hours to do it. And, even at that time, I was like, a wire, even though maybe it's not settled on the back end within the banking system, I can send a wire and at least know that the person has it, if I'm willing to pay the $30 or whatever. Right. Yeah. Pay the fee. So I started looking for what was really going to, okay, this is, Bitcoin is clearly, like, to put it in old internet speak, this is the America Online. This is the Netscape of this type of, industry movement. So what's going to be the thing? What's going to be the Amazon? What's going to, the Google, the thing that's really going to win? And very quickly you start focusing on utility, right? Yeah. So what is the most useful? What are the problems that it's trying to solve and all that kind of stuff? And it was in that context of doing due diligence that I learned about XRP. And so, I held on to Bitcoin. I don't know. We held it probably into, we sold a ton, started buying XRP, learned about XLM not long after that, started buying that. We have a whole, we've been in Litecoin and Pack Global and a whole bunch of different digital assets. But as the crucible of time has passed, and we truly now, I think, understand the world that we're going to. We're trying to live in that world. So the day-to-day around the office here is what it's going to be like for most people 5 years from now. That's the type of thing. We're trying to use the digital assets in good old-fashioned physical businesses, commodities, things of that nature, and have the deals struck in that manner, and all the flexibility that's opened up for dealing in the marketplace in that manner. So yeah, it was kind of obvious, you and I look about the same vintage. So, it was like the $6 million man. Better, we can rebuild it better, faster, stronger. Yeah. The more, and then, I'd say we initially started buying a bunch of it and at the same time learning about Ripple and the executive management team and all that. And, the way I looked at that would be the same way I would have looked at one of my corporate clients, and I was blessed enough to have some really prolific clients who did the biggest corporate transactions in the old world that will ever occur. And I admired some of them and others I didn't. The ones that I admired always had this say a charisma or a charm. They were always able to stay exactly on script. They were always measured in the way that they, even in times that were very emotionally charged, the heat of battle type moments in the boardroom, they were always almost unusually calm and were able to convey their thinking in a very succinct way and all that. I mean, that's really what I saw with the executive management team at Ripple. You know, it would be hard to say for me that I wasn't aware of the things Ripple was doing when I was investing in XRP. Of course I did. That knowing that and being sophisticated enough to be able to say that, and then, you know, thinking of XRP as a security, which I never did.
Right.
Two different things. And most of the people in this community are intelligent enough to appreciate that. They've proven that now for the past, you know, year and a half.
Yes. And that's the interesting part.
How we got into it. I mean, that's how we got into it. And that's the way we looked at it.
Well, I love what you said. Like the thing I want to speak about is dive. We're going to get into the 35,000 at the end because everybody's waiting for that part. But I want to dive in because this is what I've been working to teach just share my information of what I'm understand about these markets, right? So I say I'm a Warren Buffett style investor in cryptocurrency. I look at the real world solve, the fundamentals. I look at the leadership team, the board of directors. I invest as if I'm investing for the rest of my life, right? So if I'm putting my money into that, it's a long-term hold. I'm not, if it's coming down, I'm buying the dip. I'm dollar cost averaging in, just like you. I own 9 companies. I'm an investor. And so I really look at, and so when we get into XRP and these communities and Bitcoin and the tribalism, it's like there's this, people either just hate XRP, it's going to zero, or it's going to the moon. And why do you think that happens? And I want to share with the community, maybe they're not deep into investing or maybe not around investment type conversations all the time. You know, maybe they're just watching YouTube videos. Why do you think that happens in an investment community? Or have you experienced that in investment communities where like people are either like XRP is the worst thing ever, it's going to like if you look at the real world solve, the leadership team, it's not going anywhere, right? And if you look at the other side of it, right, so it's like these maximalists, like Bitcoin to me is a store of value, right? It's a scarce asset that's going to continue to become more scarce. And you have XRP, which is completely different, which is a bridge currency, right? That is going to solve a real world problem, which is liquidity. They've been printing money into oblivion. It's a solve for them, in my opinion. And so where do you think that comes from, where people are just like, oh my gosh, it's XRP is going to collapse, right? And then on the other side, it's XRP is going to the moon.
Well, I think that phenomenon that you're talking about is a relatively new phenomenon in investing generally. I think this passion about the way people think about a certain stock or a digital asset, that really didn't exist a decade ago. Right. I think it is something that is occurring because of millennials coming into the market and starting to become active investors, and the power of social media, right? Yep. So those two phenomenons are converging. And so I think that's why you get such a disparate range of viewpoints, and they're so passionate about their particular view. Right. But this isn't just about assets. This can be across, this could be about, you know, vaccines or, or abortion or whatever is the issue that is being considered. People are passionate about it one way or the other, right? So I actually see guys like you and me are kind of dispassionate about these things. Certainly, I want my investments to do well, and you know, I'm passionate about learning. I'm a curious learner, you know, and I'm passionate about. I love business. I love what I do. I love corporate structure. It's the thing that I just like tinkering. You know, it's what gets me out of bed in the morning. But I think that's what's going on. It's just we have this collision of all these different things, the generational dynamics impacting all that at the same time. And I think that's why you get what you get, you know, then fueled by what do you call it? A bonfire called Twitter, you know, where you're able to just say whatever you want. You know, whenever you want and press it out there, and you feel like you did something. It's like, oh, boom! Look, I just roasted that guy. And you go have a beer, and you feel great. You know, it's like, you know, I subscribe to the Dave Chappelle world of Twitter. That Twitter's not a real place.
I love it's dopamine, man. I love it. So okay, let's dive into the emotional part of it. So now all of a sudden it's the XRP case comes out, a Ripple SEC goes out after XRP. You got Bill Hinman, the emails, all this stuff. And one thing that's really been neat about this is a lot of people have the coronavirus, the beer virus, whatever. I mean, it shut one of my businesses down. We lost 70% of revenue. It ripped the veil off my face as well. I was just like, you know what? I'm not playing this game anymore. I'm creating my own path from here on out. I'm not relying on anybody left, right, up, down, God and me, and we're rolling. Let's go. Let's have some fun. Right. So what happened was it's an interesting dynamic because all of a sudden this case comes out and then it gives people something to focus on, which I love about the XRP community. But let's talk facts, figures, numbers, logic. Let's take all the emotion out of it. Let's take the case out of it. All these people moving around, like looking at XRP as a digital asset. In your opinion, what does it solve for the global financial system?
Yeah. Well, the way I think about XRP is it really is at this moment, there may be one that is created in the future. We have to allow that there could be one in the future that is more liquid, but at this moment in time, it is the most liquid asset that has ever been created. It's more liquid than oil. It's more liquid than gold. It's more liquid than cash. It is an asset that can literally take anything of value, as long as it's tokenized, right?
Yep.
And turn it into any other thing of value. Okay. That is an incredibly profound thing, right?
Yes.
So, when you think about a business person like you and I clearly are, being able to engage with another business person anywhere in the world and exchange whatever they have that I want and need, I can give them whatever they want and need. In 3 to 5 seconds, that's just a conceptually very powerful thing. Okay. So, that's the ultimate use case of an asset like that. How do we use oil? How do we use gold? How do we use these other things? It's not just all. I think one of the unfortunate things about the digital asset sector at this moment in time is that it's so transactional. Most people's mindset when dealing and interfacing with digital assets is, what is it listed for an exchange right now today? That's all they care about. And I don't give a shit about that. It's like me, it's like, how can I take this thing and use it to blow up businesses and change the game? That's how powerful of a thing this is to me. So people got to understand, when I'm speaking about these values, I'm thinking in those terms. I'm thinking about securities being tokenized and every physical asset being tokenized, and plugging into the Ripple's liquidity hub to be able to get any. You want some Bitcoin? Here's just some Bitcoin. You want some Ethereum? I don't give a shit. I'll get you any value for whatever, because you know why? I've got the most liquid thing. And so that's that's at the base level, kind of how we're looking at this stuff. When we talk about these astronomical prices, I know you want to talk about the 35,000. I think recently I was talking to some folks and I said it's probably 50,000 now. You're right. What is the present value of all the money?
Yes. See, that's the thing right there, is that's what I'm trying to get people to understand, is that it's all the money. That's what people need to understand. It's all the money. XRP has the ability to move all the money. And that's where people get so caught up in this thing where it's like, they're looking at it as Bitcoin against XRP. It's like, I look at the long term as well. It's like, I look at this digital asset as changing the world, right? And every other country sees it as a currency versus a security, right? And so that's the thing that's so dynamic about this. And what is your thoughts on the case? Like, what is your thoughts on the case? And then I want to dive into some other things with you. I want to pick your brain as much as I can. I want to go to school right now. So I love your videos, man. The thing I love about your videos is you're giving backing to this type of stuff. And then we'll get into the 30. And I also dove into your document that you sent over around the Yes. I want to talk about that as well, because I've been speaking about that from the level of education that I have. I'm just studying from the internet, diving into it. I don't have the acumen that you have. So I'd like to dive into that and talking about, the going back to a gold-backed currency and things like that. So,
I think people need to appreciate, I did spend, 20 years practicing corporate securities laws. I've designed a bunch of securities in my life.
Yep.
A whole bunch. I know what a security is, right?
Right.
So, that's why I was able to ascertain, very early in 2020, months and months and months before the lawsuit was dropped, based on the attributes of the asset itself, based on the precedent that already existed, because at this time we already had the 2015 settlement with FinCEN where they clearly described it a virtual currency and made people start complying with banking regulations as if they were a bank, right? Payments provider, payments system, payments network. Chris Giancarlo and one of his colleagues at Wilkie Farr. Wilkie Farr is a on-peer major law firm in New York, corporate securities law firm, like the law firms I worked for.
Right.
These were the people, they had done an analysis of XRP under Howey, I think in the summer of 2020, and it determined it was not a security based on the actual factors of Howey. So when the lawsuit gets dropped, I'm months and months beyond ever thinking about it as a security.
Right.
Actually, when I started, I think it was Brad Garlinghouse who announced to the market the day before that the lawsuit was going to be filed.
Yep.
I was just like, well, they're wrong.
Yes.
Wrong, right? So you kind of had that mindset going in, and then when he left the next day, then you're pushing back from the chair saying something's up, right? And I think when John Deaton talks about how he got involved in the case and decided to intervene, it was a very similar type of thing. He focuses on the secondary market trades of XRP, saying how could that possibly be a security in the way people are using it from the secondary market. And remember Deaton at the beginning really just wanted, I think he still just wants one very simple thing. He wants the SEC to amend their complaint and basically say that sales, I think you could even go purchases and sales of XRP going back to the date of the lawsuit are not a security, not a transaction. Right.
Simple.
If that happens, Deaton goes away, the XRP army goes away, everything is over for the SEC. They can go fight Ripple for 20 years. We don't care. We don't care what their claims against Ripple are. Maybe they did do it as an investment contract. They didn't, but maybe they did.
Right.
It's not our issue. Our issue is that they were so lazy because they had a different agenda that they basically pled overbroad in what they said. They didn't just say it's all that stuff that Ripple and Mr. Garlinghouse and Mr. Larson did years ago. It actually applies to Coach JV and Jimmy and Deaton and all these people, right?
Right.
So that's not accurate. So we knew we had that in the very beginning. Yep. And then there was just things that as this started to play out, I was convinced by February there were two things going on. Number one, the macroeconomic environment was so severe, and so severely out of whack that they were going to have to come up with something. There would have to be, and the way I thought about this, the way I still think about it, I mean, you were a banker. The accounting equation is a very simple law, right? Assets minus liabilities equal equity. That always has to be true. It's an algebraic equation. You could go back either way, left to right. It always must be true. Okay. But what we have right now is a liability variable that is through the stratosphere.
Yes.
It's so through the stratosphere. I don't think we can actually really say with certainty what all the money even is.
Right.
Because all we really know, we could probably come up with a reasonable estimation, not fact, but a reasonable estimation of all the money that's been printed is in circulation. We could come up with corporate debt, the central bank debt. We could kind of put those in a box and say, yeah, we think this is. But if you and I have a loan to each other, we don't know about that.
Right.
We don't know about every single lien and debt that's been issued between private parties that are in existence. It's an astronomical number. Okay. It really is. But what you could start to try to do, and this is kind of how you end up getting to the concept of a price set, a global agreement on price, that type of thing, is you could take those variables that we do know, and you could quantify those, you could liquidate those, to use attorney speak, and then you could write the asset up. You could, whatever the asset's going to be, you could do it with gold, right? And we really thought for a long time that's the way they were going to do it, that they would just like they did back in the 30s, coming out of the Great Depression, that there would be some type of a price setting, a new price setting for gold, where they would call it, at the time I did that James Rule interview in February, you could go to the US debt clock, and you can still go to it, but you could go to it online, and the implied price of gold based on all the debt and liabilities was actually $35,000 an ounce. It was trading for like 1,700. The real price, the real value of it was 35,000 an ounce. That's where the initial 35,000 comes from, actually, at that time, back in.
Got it. Okay.
So what occurred to us as we continued to think about it is, okay, well, that's great if you've got gold. What about all these countries that don't have gold? I mean, it's great for the G7, great for the G20. They get to stabilize their markets and basically equitize their debt by doing a write-up of gold. But then all the people who don't have it, you've just royally, you basically put them outside the economy.
Right.
You have devastated exactly what is going on in Sri Lanka and Panama and all these countries right now is what the result would be. You're basically putting people, millions and millions of people, outside the economy. So that really didn't seem. And then you could look at silver, same thing, oil and gas, same thing. Any asset class, you would be dealing with some type of issue like that, where not everybody could be on the same level playing field if you just picked basically an existing asset and did it. But you got this one, right?
Yeah.
A new one.
Yes. Well, they keep, so that's a verbiage that keeps coming up, even playing field, right? Financial inclusion, level playing field, financial inclusion, getting everybody within the banking system. And so they printed money to oblivion since 1971. Since 2008, more money's been printed since Bitcoin. Last 24 months, more money's been printed in history. More mortgage-backed securities been bought than in history. And as you're talking about, I highly recommend you guys all look the debt calculator. If you fast forward to 2026, it's like, how do you fix this global economy, right? You have an asset like XRP. So what would be, so knowing that, like the position they're in, if you were the leader of this world and you had to fix the global economy, what would Jimmy Vallee do?
So I would bring the leaders of the G20 together with their central bankers, and I would agree to a price on XRP. I think we would need a little more information from them based on what they really know that their obligations are, because we can look at infographics and we can do our due diligence and try to bring down BIS reports and all that stuff, and we've done that since then multiple times. But we don't really, we need them to basically be making a representation and warranty. This is what I got. Come clean. What do you got? And then I think we would write up the asset to basically collateralize that debt and re-equitize that debt, and we would announce to the world that that's what it is. And then we would probably engage in some type of a buyback process, or assist them in going through some type of buyback process, because XRP, if you listen to the highest level executive management at Ripple, it's not really intended for the retail level for us to be doing it. For us to be using it. It's for back-end settlement among the central banks and maybe the very, very largest commercial banks. But so we would get something else. The further rung down would end up with some other asset, right? And in our proposal that we made to the Fed back initially in September and then again in October, what we wanted was an asset-backed special drawing right issued effectively by the IMF. So you'd have to have this price set, at least among what we call the big kids, the country leaders first. You stabilize it there. The IMF then issues this new asset-backed, token to the people who hold the XRP to basically turn it back over to them. But really what we would do is keep those at a major commercial bank. And we would, people like you and I would basically be like, just think of very, very wealthy people who, whenever you want something or you're going to get the kids something, you would basically go to the bank and say, I want to draw down this amount of value from my account that's sitting with you. You would still let the banks go and, make markets and currencies and do all the stuff they're doing now. You probably need to hard ring in somehow their ability to go issue credit,
Gotcha.
which they'll never be able to go back, because we're going to live in an asset world. Once we do this thing, it's an asset world from there on out. We're not going to do the funny money, monopoly money thing anymore. Not till we all forget what we've gone through with this. Right. But anyway, that's what I would do. As the days pass, that could happen. I mean, I kind of mused back in February of 2021 that, gosh, people could come to a table and do something like that, and it would re-equitize their debt, and they could kind of reset and start over.
Yeah.
Now I'm convinced it is truly imminent. I mean, with all the geopolitical, issues going on in the world, we come in the office every day thinking, like, is there somebody in here today? Like, is it like they calling us today to get this done?
Well, and then in the G20, the Ripple made the short list for the CBDC. Yep. So going into that is like the central bank digital currency. So what would happen if that didn't happen, where they come back and they want to buy back our XRP? What would it look like? What would XRP look like being a normal XRP holder? I mean, what would the opposite of that look like? It would just be a digital currency, be traded on the open marketplace like XLM, XRP. Is that how it would end up?
I think from that vantage point, it looks more like, I would say 90% of people think it's going to happen, where it's a slow, over many, many decades process of putting more and more value onto the ledger. And you have a very slow and gradual rise, probably with other market fluctuations in the value of XRP. I think ultimately they've got to set the price extremely high to remove a lot of the volatility, so that even though it's 3 to 5 seconds, it's not. We've heard from Brad Garlinghouse and others at Ripple, the fact that it's so fast in and of itself relieves a lot of volatility. We talked about the Bitcoin transaction. 5 hours, price could swing thousands of dollars. And, I may intend to send you, 10,000, coach. And then, what you get is 8, or maybe you get 15, right? I mean, it could go either way, but that type of volatility in an asset means we can't come to an agreement on what something's worth and exchange value in that manner, because it could fluctuate too rapidly during the time it's outstanding.
And then David Schwartz was talking about too, where this is where a lot of people are having a lot of trouble wrapping their brains around. David Schwartz even said, just like you said, the more expensive XRP is, the cheaper the price is. Can you help us understand that? That's a lot of people are really trying to. I've been asked, I can't answer that question. So
the way I've internalized what he said, the transaction fee, there is a very nominal portion of XRP that is burned in every transaction.
Right.
And if it were to stay, if we were to try to push everything of value that's being transacted or stored right now at the prices they are, it would be such a velocity of transactions, it would consume the entire ledger, right? But I think the way he describes it, I think he said something recently that sounds a little different than this, but if it's a higher price, we're able to exchange more value in one transaction because it's $1 million a token instead of 30 cents a token. That just means we can move more through, consuming less in transaction fees, right? Now, he's tweeted recently, and maybe Mr. Schwartz can, provide some clarity on this for all of us, but he has tweeted that if it were at 10,000 a coin, you might see some need, the transaction fee would be, I guess, maybe a decimal place, if we're looking at our decimal, to the left, right? And there may be some need in the future for the nodes, for the validators to basically decide that the fee should basically go back a decimal place or something to that effect, to keep it at that super nominal. I think it's beneficial for everyone that participates in the global economy that the fee to transact is so nominal. It's not a consideration in the transaction, right? And certainly the way the facts are today, that's the way it is. It's like a 10,000th of a penny, I think.
Yes.
To transact in XRP. So that's not even worth talking about. But if the velocity were to really go, and are you familiar with, I think it's Javon's paradox, that as an asset becomes more useful, basically the demand for that asset goes up and the transactions involving it. This happened, I guess, with coal in the 1890s, that basically as coal started to be, as industrialization started to happen and people started using coal, it initially drove the price up, right? But as more and more demand for coal, not only did it have the effect of starting to stabilize the price, but people started to come up with new things to do with coal. Right. Yeah. Now we need automobiles and we need trains and we need all this stuff, right? So the same thing will occur with XRP, right? That as people truly begin to use this thing on a global scale, people are going to come up with more ideas and ways to do it. There's a group out of Korea that they're doing M&A transactions, right? Decentralized M&A transactions, plugging into the liquidity hub. I hope to do one of the first major M&A transactions on a platform like that. Yes. Being financed in a decentralized, anybody in the world could participate in this deal. And
that's amazing. So the XRP case, so the Ripple SEC XRP case. So do you think it's by design to slow it down to get a new Howey test? That's what I keep saying. They're trying to bring in a new Howey test, right? So, and then another thing too is they were saying that cryptocurrency is a fraud. It's too volatile, blah, blah, blah. And then this year, all of a sudden, the Senator Loomis bill comes out. The EU talks about in 2023, they got their crypto regulation set. America's their framework is starting to look very similar. The wording is looking very similar. So their narrative changed pretty quickly, right? From cryptocurrency is a complete fraud to we're getting involved in CBDCs, worried about stable coins, market collapses, right? So they're going after Ripple, but all these bad actors are out there just rug pulling people, right? So so is it by design, do you think, to go after Ripple to slow the transition as they get set in the global financial system?
So yes, I personally believe, and I think if you were to poll all the team around Value about it, probably everybody's kind of there's some cut of this version that this was effectively an attempt by the legacy banking system to put us in timeout and get their house in order, because I think it actually took off. I think it probably took off during the last bull run, to be honest with you, the 2017, 2018, long before I was even around. I think that's when it became very obvious to the legacy banking system. I'm talking about the JP Morgans, the Wells Fargos, the Cities, the major commercial banks, that this was going to dramatically alter their business model. And so I think initially they what it appears like, hindsight's 2020, right? Sure. But so as we sit here in the summer of 22 and we look back at everything that happened all the way since the Hinman speech in 2018. And then you learn that JP Morgan now basically owns most of the infrastructure of Ethereum through their ownership of Consensus. So much so you got the Swiss stockholders of Consensus doing, Rubin and all those guys for this, rescrambling of the egg they did. That's what it looks like to me, is that they attempted to create a monopoly through proof of work. It was slow enough that they could monopolize it. I think these next generation, the ISO infrastructure. It's so liquid, and there's so many assets that are going to get created. This whole NFT wave we watched happen in 2021. That's kind of, I guess, the initial one has come through. It's going back out now. That was just the tip of the iceberg for the type of assets that we're going to be putting on these ledgers. I mean, when I think of I don't know if you're aware, but we did the first NFT offered as a security, in the securities manner. It was a project, Bien Viaje, that we did in October of 2021. And our partner in that was an artist named Rolando Diaz, Cuban artist out of Dallas, phenomenal guy. But it was going through that process where, remember I told you that I'd spent a career designing securities, right? Yeah. So I say that just it's not like I'm a tailor and, sitting back in the back room, like needling stuff together. What I mean is, we would come up with an agreement on governance rights and economic rights. And do you have priority over me? And we start up here, waterfalls, all these types of things get wired in to securities, right? And those were the types of things that we designed. When I started to do that at a whiteboard with this digital asset, realizing that you can then take that body of rights, that bundle of sticks that we just created, and now send it anywhere in the world.
Yes.
In a completely liquid market. This is next level. When you guys got to understand, when Brad Garlinghouse is sitting on stage talking about the power of NFTs, he's not thinking about what we would call intellectual property rights, although this is certainly part of it. He's not thinking about intellectual property rights, ownership in artwork or music, types of things being sent around. They're thinking about these securities. They're thinking about these economic rights being encompassed in a non-fungible token that is then starting to go around in a completely liquid world. That's next level power. I mean, you're really talking about, think about all the economic power that exists in humanity being able to be tapped into. And if somebody's interested in your idea and wants to agree to those terms, they can put value into your idea. Just like that.
I want to unpack what you just talked. There's so much value in what you just talked about to help people understand so you talked about banks back in 2008. They started to catch on. They're like, so I left banking in 2017. I was in executive banking school around 2012. And I was really paying attention. That's when I started to understand this. I'm like, something's wrong here. Like something doesn't seem right to me. And so I started my journey and understand the Federal Reserve and money printing and all that stuff. And so when I learned about XRP and the crypto ecosystem, I immediately said to myself, here's why Jamie Dimon said banks should be scared shitless of fintech, because they realized that, oh my gosh, they literally can create their own banking systems on their own. And so they immediately and swiftly started to, no pun intended, swiftly started to activate, right, with ISO 20000. R3 is with Wells Fargo. Ripple's with Bank of America. You just said it. JP Morgan is with deep in consensus, which is Ethereum. Everybody's like, Ethereum's going to collapse. Ethereum isn't going anywhere. Ripple's not going anywhere. R3 is not going anywhere. Algorand's not going anywhere. They're already building this infrastructure. And what people are experiencing is this massive amount of volatility that could be by design to shake people out, right? So everybody's running for the hills. Everything's, cryptocurrency's a fraud. You see the media, but this happens in history over and over again, right? When something massive is coming, first they resist it. Then they sue it, then they regulate it, then they join it.
Ray Dalio's just written a whole book about these cycles. They keep repeating over time. This is the first time this type of all these things have come together at the same time in probably over 100 years, about 120 years. So the first time in our lifetimes we've seen it, which is why we're not really sure. But if you zoom way out, this is repeated. It's been thousands of
over again. Yeah, I've been talking. Gosh, I love that you said that. The great reinforcement. I've been talking about that on my TikTok, and YouTube. It's like economic. We have a war narrative, and we have a climate change narrative. All three major things happening right now.
Disease.
disease, yep, that are all used to
all the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Right. And everybody's sitting back, and it's like it's I just keep saying it's the greatest time in human history. And so having people take a deep breath, like really look at the fundamentals, long term, understanding what you're investing in. And so XRP to 35,000, I want to talk about that, or the buyback for 35. We dove into that, and you guys sent a letter to the Federal Reserve. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that was about? I read through the whole thing. I was so intrigued by it. So you sent a letter to the Federal Reserve in 2021, talking about a potential buyback.
Correct. So I'd say in the summer, and again, because of our experience and knowledge watching the case, we became very concerned that the retail XRP holder would not be able to get justice out of anything that happened with any of the three branches of government, right? Because it comes from assumption that the legacy banking system is so permeated through Congress, the executive branch, and potentially even the judicial branch, that it would be virtually impossible to get justice out of the current existing federal government system. Okay. So with that perspective, you kind of like, well, what can we do? We started to become very concerned that at the end of this story, there was some type of a taking that would occur. So fair market value really needed to be established prior to that event occurring, because if that event occurs where they come to take it or buy it back without us having the value out there, they would name the price, right? They could come and say $10 and everybody would be like, $10, that's great. When really they're like, oh my God, this thing's going to run all the money, right? So it was that initial type of thought. I think because, I've done, hundreds of M&A transactions in my career. So doing these term sheets, and stuff like that about setting the framework up about how it could happen, was a very easy thing for me to do, and just felt like something. It was just one of those things that, well, if I don't do it, who would? What big law lawyer is going to step off the partner perch? It's not going to be Jay Clayton or Bill Hinman. We know that. which one of these guys who's making millions and millions of dollars is going to step off and take a risk to do this type of thing? I just happened to be in a position that I could do it, had the skills to do it. So as we started to think, well, who's the right party to be the counterparty to us if you did a deal like this, and well who's got the biggest problem? They're the ones who've created all the debt, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, well, that's our counterparty. That would be the buyer, right? So then it's M&A structuring. How would the deal be structured and that type of a thing. The consideration has four elements. Everyone focuses on like the price per token. That's just one. That's one of the four things, right? The price is a result of trying to wrap our arms around this thing that we discussed earlier is basically impossible to do. But what is all the money? If that's the intended use case, that all the money is going to report, all value is going to report through the ledger at the end, right? When it's all said and done, what is the value of that today, right? So we went through a variety of very classic valuation techniques with that assumption. Okay. It's all the money. So we need to start with all that value. And then, you can do a discounted cash flows. That's the value that's moving through the system, and discount it back to today. You can do, we called it the collateralization model, where you just tried to, this was like thinking about it like gold, like repricing gold, that, okay, gold needs to be equal to all the money. So what's the price of gold need to be? So that would effectively be collateralizing everything into gold. We thought about it the same way. You could collateralize everything into the ledger. So we went through, and then the other one that was big was the Susan Affey, Robert Michnick valuation model, which anybody can go find online. Susan Affey was a Ripple board member. Michnick ended up doing some work for Ripple, but he's at BlackRock now. And I think they came up with this model, this valuation model, in 2018. And they valued both. It was a valuation model for any digital asset, and they valued both Bitcoin and XRP in that paper. It's highly educational, but the two driving dynamics in their valuation is transaction throughput and store of value. And the reason is because if you are using the digital asset, it's not XRP centric. It's agnostic to any digital asset. If you're using it because you want to store value, you're basically taking that you're taking that supply off the table and you're sticking it in a closet somewhere, right? Sticking it in a vault somewhere. And so whatever's left, then what's the demand to use it for transactions and what supply is available to do that? Those two things, transactions and store of value, is what drives the model. And then it kind of comes up with a relationship between those two. There's discounting factors for, especially when you think about this in a 2018 world, what is the likelihood that this specific asset will go the distance and be used? I think in 2018, thinking about XRP being used the way we think about it being used in 2020, pretty different, right? You didn't have all the partnerships, central banks coming out saying they're using RippleNet and all that stuff. It's been de-risked substantially in those 4 years. So, but that was a model we used. So that's how we kind of arrived at. Initially, we proposed 25,000. That was the price per XRP. And then when we sent the one in the end of October, it was 37.5.
Got it. Wow.
That was one element. The second element was, at that time we were still waiting on our Flare airdrop. I think we still are, right? But the snapshot had already occurred, so we knew we were getting Flare. I think we knew we were getting Songbird, and there were other projects. The Elysius project, I think, is what it's called, which does the NFTs. They were dropping a token. There's been many tokens that are going to be airdropped to the XRP holders.
Yeah.
And the way, and I tried to explain this to people on Twitter, and it's like, they don't get it. They don't think this way. But when you go through property class in law school, the first thing you learn is that property is really a bundle of sticks. Okay. And each one of those sticks is a different right. You may have the right to possess it. You may have the right to walk on it. You may have the right to get water from it. It's just a whole bunch of rights, and you bundle that up, and that's what property is. Okay. Well, one of the rights that are bundled up into our XRP bundle of sticks is the right to get these airdrops. And it seems like that the banking system could use the XRP to move the value without having that particular stick. So we said what we need to do is we need to have a residual, we call it a residual airdrop right. We need to take that stick out and we keep that one. And that needs to be a tradable thing, right? Like once you have it, that actually could be traded to other, maybe somebody thinks there's going to be a lot more airdrops to XRP in the future. Maybe the guy who's holding it thinks there's not going to be. So he would gladly sell his, airdrop right to somebody else. But there would need to be a residual airdrop right forked off of the XRP. So we gave them all the XRP. We kept that right.
Got it.
That was number 2. Number 3 was there should be a debt forgiveness. And, our conception on that was that, we're trying to solve the debt problem over here.
Right. Yeah.
I've got the asset that's going to do it, right? All you got to do is agree with me on what the price is, and you're going to get all these ancillary benefits by going through this process, is the way I was thinking about our potential counterparty. So you're going to basically, anybody who participates in this deal and gives you their XRP for you to go solve your problem, it's your debt anyway. You're the one who created it. Go ahead and just take care of that off our balance sheet, was kind of the concept for that third prong. And then the fourth was effectively a derivative of the same thing. It was the people who tender into this deal should not only not have to pay tax on the deal. That would make no sense. That all of our tax dollars are allegedly going to pay off the interest on the Fed debt anyway, right? It's their debt. So we shouldn't have to pay taxes on that. But you know what? The people who have actually gone through this crucible of the lawsuit and lived through all this kind of fraud and everything that's been imposed on us, the market manipulation, as using the lawsuit as pretext, the delisting, all that stuff, every one of these people has walked through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yes.
You know it, I know it. The people who've been emailing you, we have gone through an emotional, spiritual, sometimes physical crucible that a lot of people cannot understand unless you've actually walked a mile in our shoes.
Right.
Therefore, as a benefit for saving the world effectively with this business deal and participating in that transaction, we should not only receive a permanent tax holiday for ourselves, but all of our descendants should also never have to pay tax into this system again, because they're going to be taking that XRP and they're going to be benefiting for millennia, right? 1,000 years off of us doing this deal. I don't want you coming to my great grandchild who's, a multi-billionaire and basically shaking them down for taxes because they don't know what great granddad did, great grandmom did, 100 years ago. So those four, that was the element of the consideration. The rest of the deal is basically mechanics. Val Hill would receive a fee for basically coming up with the idea and structuring it and putting it together and putting it out there. At the time we did that, I was really scared. I mean, I really thought, as far as I know, it's unprecedented. I don't think anybody has ever done that, proposed a deal to the Fed like that, right. And they'd already sued Ripple, I was really like, in days, I'll have SWAT team people here. It was really that type of thing, and we had the members of the confidential committee, involved. So that's the reason they had to be confidential. We didn't want to basically put these other people's lives at risk because they were willing to give us their time and skills and participate in really trying to dig down and figure out what is the true value of this stuff. What should people be willing to receive? So I've already prepaid law firms and all this stuff in case I'm arrested or whatever were to happen. Now so much time has passed. Thank God everyone thought I was crazy in the beginning. And so they just dismissed it, right? It doesn't make any sense. And it seems like so much time has passed. So many people know about it now. Yeah. I think they can't do anything. They can ignore it and not do it. That's fine. But what they can't do is come try to steal it from us, because we're just no. There's the value right there. And as a matter of fact, since it's now 2022, that was the value in October 2021. We need to reassess what the value is in 2022. And you, buyer on the other side of the table, are going to need to give us some information so that we can have our army of lawyers and bankers and accountants dig into this and verify not only that that's the actual value, but also we've got our consideration has to be truly asset backed. We need legal opinions from major law firms putting their own ass on the line that says the property that we're supposed to get in this deal is actually legit asset backed property.
Wow. So since you went on a limb and sent that out there, now that's there. So they have to reference that? Is that how it works? Or is that?
Well, I mean,
something of reference now.
I fully expect that what they wanted to do was crush us with this lawsuit for as long as it took, and then come out and say, here's $10, here's $20. Right. Yeah. And you got to pay tax on it. And it's a capital gains transaction, all this type of stuff. I think that was their goal. That was the plan. And what I hope is that if anybody receives such a offer from the federal government, they would say, excuse me, but I think I'll take this deal over here. So why don't you call those guys and work it out with them? Wow. And whatever you end up working out with them, that'll probably be good enough for me. So we haven't had, people don't appreciate that it takes two to tango, right? It to do any
100%.
transaction,
Yeah.
you got to have somebody sitting on the other side of the table saying things that will work for them and things that won't, you know?
And do you think they've experienced anything like this? You got John Deaton with 67,000 people, filling out a petition to. I mean, got you reaching out to the Federal Reserve. I mean, this is intense. I mean, this has got to be intense for them, for the SEC with, and you got the Bill Hinman emails, and this has got to be intense because number one, the public is waking up. You got TikTokers like me that have millions of followers talking about, they're allowing me to go out there and talk about this stuff, and people are literally going out and doing their own research now. They're pulling back the curtain on these guys. And what do you think is going to happen with the case? Like, do you think it's going to settle this year, 2023? Do you have any insight on that?
I almost hate to say anything because, I was the guy who thought this was going to be over like last summer.
Me too, man. I said it like 500 times.
Because of all the stuff that was coming out then, and I said this, in my discussion with Ray Fuentes of Link to, last week, the Securities Exchange Commission and a lot of leaders in our government are in a very precarious position right now.
Yes.
If you want to preserve anything of your reputation, I mean anything, you need to get to the table. You need to blow the whistle, get to the table, do whatever it would take. Like 3 days ago, like it's really too late. If you fence road the issue this long, you deserve whatever happens wherever this goes.
Right.
And I mean, wherever this goes, this may be more far reaching than an economic transaction. I don't know, but it might. Okay. But like you said, it's between you and God, and we're responsible. We're accountable for our own selves as men on this earth. It is the same for them. And I just hope that they can get right before it's too late. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say about that. The SEC seems to have absolutely no shame. I mean, in the fact that Chairman Gensler can go before Congress and he can do interviews on CNBC and have meetings with Jamie Dimon and George Soros and all these guys, and is just completely ignoring this massive movement, could have extreme consequences. And so I would like to beg the powers that be, which I don't think Chairman Gensler actually has control of this. I think it is
right.
It is higher than him.
Yep.
And I thought that for a year. So to those powers that be, they need to allow humanity to go forward in a positive manner in the way that humanity is demanding be done. And the longer that they try to, the old world has already imploded.
Yes.
The debt swirl into the black hole has already occurred. People like us are actually being shot out the other side already into the asset-backed world, which is going to be beautiful. But the gravity going into a black hole is so substantial, it sucks light in. There will be no escaping it. It is happening, and they're trying to reach up and grab onto, the trees and the stuff as they're just being sucked into this thing. Let go. Let go. Let happen what's going to happen. Get right with whoever you need to get right with. But, save your life and your reputation for this next chapter, because it's going to be really great. It's not going to be the same. It won't be this fee-taking middleman world that we all lived in for a lot of years. We all were part of it. It worked for us while it did. But that's the past. We need to go forward into the future.
That's beautiful. Well, the good way to kind of cut it off here, because I want to spend some more time with you in the future. Hopefully, don't want to overwhelm our welcome. I want to say thank you, Jimmy. This has been amazing. You've answered so many questions, almost every single question that was emailed to me. And if it's possible, we'd like to have you on in the future as well. I just want to say thank you. I've learned so much from your documents, and I want to say thank you for being bold enough to go out there and send that letter to the Federal Reserve and being a generational shifter. And I think what we can take from this interview is, number one, the game has changed. We're moving from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. We're going to tokenization. We're not going to stop the freight train. It's already left the building, as Rosa Rios said. It's about getting on board and going for the ride of your life. And so what I always encourage you warriors, cut out frivolous spending, cut out the frivolous spending, maybe put a couple dollars in these speculative assets and enjoy your life. Go back and be present with your family and get your shit together. That's what I tell people all the time. This is not the time to play games with your family's wealth. This is the greatest time in human history where I believe the normal everyday person has an opportunity to get on an even playing field. But as you do that, as you become a millionaire, what's more important is who you become. So this time, these hard times coming is going to reveal character. So warriors, dig deep, dig deep. Make sure you're watching the right things, hearing the right things, ingesting the right things. So we love you. We appreciate you. And thank you so much, Jimmy. As we always say, warriors, get your shit together. Let's go.